Welcome to QueerTWENTY, the cohort of 2022. QueerTWENTY is EgoMo's annual flagship program where we celebrate exceptional queer Indians. Today, we have Vaishali Kannan with us. She has been an advocate of issues faced by disabled peers in a society that struggles accepting not only queerness but even disabling. Narrating her own experience and finding her own voice, she ended up writing a memoir, Homeless, Growing Up Lesbian and Dyslexic in India. Currently, Vaishali works at Salesforce and writes developmental documents. And she also leads their peer resource group for JPAC region. Oh wait, did I tell you she also hosts a fabulous podcast called Curious Conversation? Do check it out. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Vaishali. Vaishali, thank you so much for joining us today. You hold a unique intersection as a queer person, as someone who's also dyslexic. Could you share a bit about your journey, as in how these identities have shaped your narrative till now?
Yeah. So I discovered that I'm a lesbian when I was 19 years old. That was when I fell in love with a friend of mine from college. And I discovered I was dyslexic a year after that. So I was 20 years old when I discovered that I was dyslexic. And that came after, I was having some problems doing a course. And they were very unique problems. And I was like, researching a little bit. And I thought, maybe I could be dyslexic. So I self diagnosed myself. And then I went in for a formal diagnosis and I got that at the age of 20, basically. And not knowing that I was dyslexic and queer for 2 decades of my life, even though I was still dyslexic and queer, right? I mean, it's not like I wasn't. That created this feeling of alienation a little bit. I always thought I was different, but I didn't know why or how. So, sometimes I thought there's something wrong with me because, I wasn't able to perceive things the same way. I wasn't having the same feelings as many people in my age were having. And that really created like a distance, that didn't help me connect with others easily. Like I always thought like I was like a little different, and the moment people will think I'm different, they will sort of like leave me, or like, they will not be that connected with me. So I would always, change my identity, try to be more like others that I saw, like I was always doing that. So once I discovered these identities, I was still like in this phase where I wasn't sure, if I'm like, going to own it, or if I'm still going to like, act like, I'm different, so that, I can still make friends and make connections, even though, those weren't like really those deep connections you form when somebody really knows you. Those are those, connections you form when you still feel alienated and, you still feel lonely. So I have been feeling lonely all my life because of that. So once these identities came to me, I was still in the closet after that for a few years. And I still wouldn't tell people I'm dyslexic because I don't know what they'll think of me and all of that. And then I joined a course. And in this course, I was not doing well. Like in the first semester, I had failed in two papers. And much of it was because the question papers were really, really hard to understand. Like, not that I knew all the answers. I just didn't know what the question was. So, there's no way I could have given the right answer, right? And I also couldn't ask anyone for help because, again, I was in this, pretend phase where I was closeted. I didn't really make that kind of deep friends where I could, ask for help. So I was having like a lot of trouble. And, the only way I could explain what troubles I was having was, telling people I'm dyslexic and, these are the challenges that I face. And that's when I realized, okay, I have to advocate for myself if I want to finish a degree, if I want to get a job, and if I want to like, actually have real connections in my life, I have to be myself and advocate for myself. And that started in my mid-20s where I was, being who I am. And now I'm like, slowly reached a place where I'm in a safe space. I have enough privilege to now advocate for others. And that's been my journey. And now I'm in a place where I can use my writings, my podcasts, my role as a DEI leader in my company to not just, raise awareness, but also be an advocate for people like me, for others who are not like me, but still have like their own unique perspectives and challenges.
That's that personally, like at least the first half of it, personally resonates with me a lot. Not like you've always like I face a similar intersection of being a neurodivergent here. And
Okay.
guessing I was always
Oh,
a neurodivergent person and always here,
yeah.
just didn't know that these terms existed, especially coming from a small
Mhm.
town. Like, and this is an era where like with that context, like the alienation and
Yeah.
the loneliness, it kind of leads is it's a bit painful. But I'm so glad that you have not only found a way to see yourself for who you are, but also being a support to so many. It's nice. Like that's an understatement, but yeah. Vaishali, tell me something. What
Okay.
strategies have you found to effectively manage and probably even leverage your dyslexia in corporate settings?
Yeah. So the ones that were like hard for me to do myself was, setting the right expectations. I think we all have to do that in some measure. But as a dyslexic person, I feel like, because there's so much misunderstanding about dyslexia, I have to go one step ahead and talk about what kind of jobs I can do well. Like, where there's out of the box creative thinking, I'm naturally suited for that. I can do those well. But when there is something very mundane, very repetitive, I'm not the best suited for that. I can still do it, but I would rather do the other kind of work that I'm suited to do. So to tell that to people that I'm working with constantly, telling them once doesn't work. You have to keep telling them that, thank you for this work, but I rather do this work. Or like when they give me the right kind of work, to like, tell them this is exactly what I wanted and you're going to see me thrive in this because this is exactly the kind of work that I'm meant to do. And you won't always get what you want, but that kind of education re-education really helps. And it's also I also had to say no a lot because I feel like as neurodivergent individuals, we tend to immediately help others. Like I feel like because we have always wanted that for ourselves, I had this tendency to like help everyone, and then I will say I'm lacking behind in my work because of that. And people they start coming to you for help, right? Naturally. And then you're like, overwhelmed all the time. You're burning out, all that happened to me. And now I'm, in a space where I can actually, set boundaries and tell others that, I would love to help you, but I'm really sorry. I have this other work that is priority for me right now. And saying no has been very empowering and very important in my journey because I took me a long time to realize that that's something I needed to do. And now I help other people. I see some neurodivergent people in my office doing the same thing. I'm like, you know what, you should start saying no. And I try to like help them and make them see why you should say no, because you need to like not just help them once, you also need to give them resources, point them to resources so that they can then help themselves and learn those skills, not come to you again and again. And another thing I noticed, I realized very recently, was that I actually suffer from imposter syndrome a lot. And the way my imposter syndrome manifests is I do not ask for help. So on one hand, I'm helping everyone, but I will never ask anyone for help. And now what I do is, I'm very conscious about seeing where the gap is, where I can do something, but if someone helps me, I can do it faster. And this is not just people, right? It's also tools. There are so many tools out there. Like the last 1.5 years, ever since I started using a screen reader, and recently I started using a dictation software, that has really like made my life so much easier. But because of imposter syndrome, I was denying myself even tools.
Could you shed some light on like some common misconceptions that people may
Yeah.
have about dyslexia that you might want to?
I think the biggest misconception with dyslexia and any neurodiverse identity is that it affects performance. And that's the most harmful one, because a person would not hire someone with dyslexia if they thought that person may not be able to perform. And I always say it's not dyslexia that affects my performance, it's the environment. And it's very important when, I tell somebody I'm dyslexic, they shouldn't ask me, will you be able to do this job? That's the wrong question. The question is, what environment can I give you? What tools can I give you? What kind of, support can I give you that will help you do the job? That I've not seen a lot. I see it sometimes, but that is the most important like misconception that we need to break, that it's not like a barrier to performance. And when you support somebody, not just in their job, but also create like emotional safety to like make mistakes, take risks, and also like set the right kind of expectations, give the right kind of tools, you will see that dyslexia is a very big gift to the to any organization. Like a person with dyslexia, a person with ADHD, they're all gifts. But you need to see it that way, and that's the main like mindset shift that's needed in a lot of places. And there are also like misconceptions I see more in school, like dyslexic people are lazy, dyslexic people are just like they have some attitude issues, and so people, neurodiverse people in general, do like suffer from anxiety and depression more than neurotypicals do. So that's a fact, and that's because of not getting the right kind of environment growing up, right? You go to school, it's not meant for a dyslexic person. It's always like reading and writing gets priority over speaking, and you're always expected to like you don't even get like, you can't even type your answer, you have to write everything, which brings a lot of issues. You have to sit in a classroom with so much distraction and try to give an exam, which also is really hard, right? So because of that, a lot of people with dyslexia develop anxiety, and they have like all that kind of issues, mental health issues that they're going through. That doesn't mean that having dyslexia will give you that. It's just the environment that we are in.
That's a very good question to kind of like reflect upon. So thank you for that. Your roles, like your work roles, uh, are in a kind of intersection of advocacy and technology, right?
Yeah.
And technology is playing a significant role in creating change. Has like I know you already mentioned few examples, but
Yeah.
is there any broader way in which technology has helped you kind of dismantle the harmful narratives that exist within queer and neurodivergent communities? Like if you could like elaborate with any examples.
Yeah, for sure. So I think without technology, I don't think I would have half the knowledge that I have about neurodiversity, for instance. Like, everything I read about dyslexia, it's usually from a very clinical lens, right? Because it's written by doctors, more or
Yeah.
less, and psychiatrists. So they write about, the symptoms, but not the lived experience, because a lot of them are neurotypical when they are, coming into these spaces. But with technology, I'm able to find resources of lived experiences, and that has changed a lot for me. Like you said, you forget that you have ADHD. You probably got a late diagnosis, right? Because you've not had enough time to come and grapple with the fact that you have ADHD, and that happens to me all the time. And when I have resources like social media handles, for example, that keep talking about dyslexia, that reminds me that I have dyslexia. Like I keep thinking about what they post about, and all the things that they share, and having this conversation with you. These are like ways to like remind myself that this is part of me, this is me, who I am, and that helps me not forget it, and like go into that space where I burn out. And for being queer as well, like I feel like um, with technology, I have really found, there are so many spaces that are safe online. There are unsafe spaces as well. I wouldn't say everything is safe, but there are spaces where you can be anonymous. Like there are Discord channels or Reddit. These spaces are very anonymous. You can go seek advice, talk to people, and honestly, like all the queer friends I have, I met online. That's just how it like happens, right? And even if I know about like an offline queer event, I know it through online resources. I don't know how anyone would discover. I don't know how people used to do it back in the days, but nowadays, like anything queer, I get access to through online spaces, and technology has really helped me with that. And with my book and my podcast, first of all, the podcast is online. It's all using technology, right? And I'm able to talk to people all around India, and sometimes even outside India, who have lived in India and have that same shared queer experience. And it wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for all these softwares that you can use to talk like the way we are doing right now. And I can also now, once all this is recorded, it's also available for anyone to listen through technology. So it reaches more, more people. It just gets amplified when it's online. And lastly, like there's so many support groups that happen online these days, like queer support groups, ND support groups, where you can actually go talk about your problems. And the barrier of whether they'll accept me, whether they will help me and all is broken because it's online.
Right. Yeah. So, Vaishali, you also head the resource group, like the peer resource group in Salesforce, right? So you have had experience of trying to make things better. Given that context, in what
Yeah,
ways
you
do
need to
you
set
think
boundaries with social media for
workplaces
sure.
can
That
better
happens to me
support
as
queer and neurodivergent individuals?
like there are so many things a workplace can do, but the real gap in India is our society doesn't accept and respect us yet, and we don't have the kind of legal rights that we need. So I feel like there is a lot that a workplace can do to bridge that. Give us the rights, like now I can add my partner in my insurance, for example. Now that's slowly coming outside as well, but I had that I could do that in 2019, which was a big thing back then, to be able to support my partner and her parents through my insurance. That's been a big deal for me. And also the spaces, like we in my office, we have so many big posters, and when we see queer people in those posters, that really helps me feel like I belong there. There are the space is already queered up, like what I'm saying. And having gender neutral washrooms, for example, that makes it so much easier for just basic needs actually. But it does help a lot with a queer person trying to even exist in a space, right? To see those reminders that being queer is okay in the space. And when it comes to neurodiverse individuals, I feel like um, having a distraction-free environment is so important. And nowadays offices have open layouts, and it becomes very hard to focus. So having focus rooms, or having the option to work from home becomes very important when you're neurodivergent. And also having all that software that I mentioned earlier, screen readers and detection software and all of that really helps. And caption software whenever you're in a meeting, uh, they really help like stay focused and also comprehend things better.
Yeah. So, okay, my last question to you. Your
Right.
This conversation has like offered definitely valuable insights that I'm going to
Thanks.
take and like kind of reflect upon. But if you were to leave me and the audience with 2 points of advice, um, who might be navigating both queer and neurodivergent identities in a
It
professional
is.
setting, what would those 2 points be?
Yeah. Whoa. Well, the first point definitely, know the difference between safe spaces and comfort zones. I think we confuse that a lot. Like, as queer and neurodivergent people, sometimes what we think are comfort zones are actually very unsafe spaces. We're used to like a baseline of anxiety that we go through. And sometimes, you don't want to know about unknown. You're like, okay, this is a space I know, even though I'm not like completely safe here. It's okay. And you think you're comfortable, but actually being in a safe space is so much important, because you can be yourself, you can advocate for yourself, and you can also like not mask a lot, like not pretend a lot, not be in the closet. It just has so much to offer. But because you want to be in a comfortable zone, you sometimes miss out on being in a safe space. And I feel like that's something I see a lot, where people are like, "ठीक है, I'm here, it's okay, I'm fine, I don't want to go anywhere, I'm doing okay." But you can like do so much, you can thrive, you don't have to burn out so much. So I think that reflection needs to be there with us, like whether we are in a comfort zone or a safe space. And the other thing is like imposter syndrome. Oh my God, I've seen so many neurodivergent and queer people go through imposter syndrome. Like, honestly, if you go into a meeting room, let's say, and there are five neurotypical heterosexual cisgender men, and you're the only like queer woman with neurodiverse identity, you would look like an imposter to anyone else also. Like, when they're looking in, you're the only person who is different from everyone else in that room, right? So, that then has a lot of psychological effects that we generally don't know till we realize that, yeah, we are suffering from imposter syndrome. And there's so many resources online where people have talked about their imposter syndrome, how it comes out, what kind of, ways that they can, like, stop it. Like, but I was talking about not asking for help. That's one of the ways my imposter syndrome comes out. And I see a lot of women going through this, even 10 neurotypical, because being a woman in tech is also something quite.
Thank you so much, Vaishali, for this call.